The anxious generation. Harms of phone-based childhood, 2. Harm number 3, attention fragmentation. Have you noticed how much technology affects young people's attention spans these days?
Absolutely. It's alarming how many notifications they get. I heard it's about 192 alerts per day on average.
Right. And that breaks down to almost one notification every 5 minutes for teens, which is quite overwhelming.
It makes sense when you think about it. With all those distractions, it's no wonder they struggle with anxiety.
Exactly. The constant interruptions can lead to a confused and scatterbrained state, as William James described.
I read that heavy users, like older teen girls, can experience interruptions almost every minute. That's just too much.
It is. And it mirrors Vonnegut's dystopia, where everyone is handicapped by constant distractions.
It's fascinating and concerning at the same time. I wonder how this affects their mental health long term.
Studies show that this tech overload can contribute to increased anxiety and difficulty focusing.
I've read that constant notifications can really fragment their attention.
Exactly. Studies show that even the mere presence of a phone can reduce cognitive capacity.
That makes sense. I heard one study found performance is best when phones are left in another room.
Right. And it's especially troubling for adolescents with ADHD, who tend to be heavier users of smartphones.
I can see how that might exacerbate their symptoms. It's a tricky situation.
Indeed. A Dutch study even found that problematic social media use can lead to stronger ADHD symptoms over time.
Wow, that's concerning. It seems like the design of apps is aimed at keeping their attention, too.
Absolutely. App designers capture attention with exciting stimuli, making it hard for them to focus.
So, schools going phone-free might really help improve concentration and learning.
Yes, capturing a child's attention is crucial for their development, especially in a school setting. Harm hashtag for addiction.
My daughter often struggles to look away from her iPad.
It's fascinating but concerning. When they engage with apps, their brains release dopamine, which makes them want to keep coming back for more.
I've heard about dopamine. But how does it really affect their behavior?
Dopamine is linked to feelings of pleasure and pain. When kids achieve something on their devices, it feels good, and they crave that feeling again.
So, it's not just about having fun? It can actually become an addiction?
Exactly. While most adolescents using social media aren't addicted, their desires can be manipulated by app design, similar to how slot machines work.
That sounds alarming. How do these apps keep their attention?
They use a 4-step process to create a habit-forming loop. An external trigger, an action, a variable reward, and then back to the trigger.
Can you give an example of that process?
Sure. For instance, a notification on their phone can prompt them to check the app, leading to a potential reward like likes or comments.
That makes sense. So, it's designed to keep them engaged longer than they intended.
Precisely. This design is rooted in behaviorist techniques, which can be very effective at capturing attention.
It's fascinating how they use behaviorist psychology to hook us.
Right? Like, when a rat presses a bar for food, it doesn't get rewarded every time, which makes it keep pressing.
Exactly. That variable ratio schedule creates a strong desire for the next reward, just like in social media.
And did you know that dopamine levels surge in anticipation of that reward? It's like a rush.
Yes. That's why even if someone doesn't like a post right away, the craving still drives them to check back.
It's kind of wild how our brains work. The anticipation can keep us hooked even after a disappointment.
Definitely. And when users invest in their profiles or games, it makes the experience even more personal and engaging.
That's true. Like when someone fills out their profile or collects digital badges, it creates a sense of ownership.
Exactly. And once that investment is made, users don't need notifications to feel the urge to check in.
It's like their own thoughts trigger the behavior. They crave that connection and validation from others.
Right. It's all about creating a cycle of anticipation and reward, which is powerful in keeping users engaged.
Digital addiction is becoming more common among teens.
I read that some of them experience withdrawal symptoms when they're away from their devices. What does that mean?
Lemke mentions that common withdrawal symptoms include anxiety, irritability, and insomnia.
So, it's like their brains are reacting as if they were withdrawing from drugs?
Exactly. The brain adapts to high dopamine levels from screen time, making ordinary life feel dull or even painful without it.
That sounds tough. I can see how that would affect their social interactions too.
Yes, when they're anxious and isolated, it's harder for them to connect with others during school.
And I guess that leads to even more anxiety when they're trying to focus on their studies?
Absolutely. The constant pull of their phones can make it difficult to concentrate on homework.
It's alarming to think about how this digital age is impacting their mental health.
On the benefits of social media for adolescents. Have you seen the recent advisory from the U.S. Surgeon General about social media and youth mental health?
Yes, I have. It highlights how social media can pose significant risks to children and adolescents.
Exactly. The report mentions that social media can actually provide some benefits, like creating connections among youth.
Right, I read that a Pew report found 58% of teens feel more accepted through social media.
And 71% see it as a creative outlet. It seems like there are positive aspects to consider.
Absolutely, but the report also warns that the evidence of long-term benefits is quite limited.
Yes, and it's concerning that many teens report feelings of loneliness and isolation despite being connected online.
That's true. The advisory suggests that while social media can help marginalized youth, it doesn't replace real-world connections.
It's interesting how some groups, like sexual minority youth, find support online, but we need to be cautious about over-relying on it.
Exactly. The report emphasizes that social media isn't the only way for kids to connect. There are other means too.
A recent survey by Common Sense Media found that LGBTQ adolescents often believe their lives would be better without social media.
That sounds concerning. How much more likely are they to encounter harmful content?
LGBTQ girls are more than twice as likely as non-LGBTQ girls to face harmful content related to suicide and eating disorders.
That's alarming. Is it just LGBTQ teens facing these issues?
No, there's also a racial aspect. Black teens report feeling targeted by online abuse more than their Hispanic or white peers.
Wow, and what about socioeconomic factors?
Teens from low-income households are twice as likely to report physical threats online compared to those from higher-income families.
That really highlights the disparities. What about the age of the kids using these platforms?
That's another critical point. Many benefits of social media are touted for older teens, but do 12-year-olds really need platforms like Instagram or TikTok?
It seems like there should be stricter age enforcement for these accounts.
Absolutely. The current minimum age of 13 should be enforced to protect younger kids from potential harm.